Malcolm Hoenlein is with us, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. We call this the Weekly Update. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM and the AM.
Thank you. If I might say, I think Rosh Chodesh should be on the 30th day of Av. That's all.
Well, I'm processing this one because the 30th day of Av is actually Rosh Chodesh.
Right. That's when it should be.
This year, August the 13th. I said earlier in the show, you can't listen to JM and AM without a calendar. You certainly can't host it without a calendar. And you cannot listen to the Weekly Update without a map. You can't, when I heard about a Muslim invasion of Spain, I'm saying to myself, oh my gosh, are they rioting in Madrid? And then, of course, I went and saw that in the northeast portion of Morocco, they have this little area that Spain actually, I guess, owns or controls. What was your reaction, by the way, when you heard about this quote-unquote invasion?
This is an area called Ceuta, and it's...
have you been there?
I actually have. There are Spanish enclaves, two of them, and and there were Jews, a lot of Jews who lived in those two enclaves for a long time, and that was why I visited. Passing through, the
second one is also northeast. The second one's also right there.
It's on the coast also, and there are historic reasons why this was the case, and the invasion that is taking place. 50,000 people invaded Spain from Morocco, and there were no police. There was nobody to stop them. And had they been there, they could have stopped this early on. But it tells you that Spain is so busy fighting Israel and hating on Israel in every respect that they don't worry about their own security and what's happening on their own borders.
Wow.
And when you lose respect for your borders, which is what's happening and happened all over Europe and here too, and why that becomes a flashpoint argument in the upcoming elections, about the open borders and free borders, and the price you pay. And here, if you look at the pictures, you see that these are all young men, all military age, not families coming across. These are, they're looking for work. And once you get into Europe, you can fan out across Europe, and there are no border checks. It's very hard to be controlled. So now the army has gone to the border, and they're trying to stop it. But, it's closing the barn door after all the animals have left.
There are some, and it's funny that you said what you just said, because there are some, meaning about the Spanish attitude toward Israel, because there are some who are actually blaming this episode on Israel. And I don't know if that's why you started with that, if the Spanish would deal with Israel differently, maybe this would have gone differently. But was that, in fact, a response to some of those who have elevated Israel to the top of the list of who to blame here?
Well, it's automatic. Whatever happens in the world, anywhere, regardless, if some Shushan guy in a corner in London, trips, then, of course, Israel somehow set it up that and are responsible. It's not funny because the impact in the societies as a whole, people believe this, and the immediate attributions by any country that wants to avoid responsibility for something that happens. If a ship gets attacked in the Caspian Sea, the suspicion almost automatically.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting it's funny. I was simply asking if that's why you started with that. Your initial reaction when I asked about the episode was to bring in the Spanish attitude toward Israel. Was that a direct response to those who are blaming Israel, or you were simply making a general comment that if Spain would stay out of the geopolitical arena with Israel, maybe things would be different?
No, I meant it very seriously, that Spain's obsession with Israel,
right,
and it is an obsession, and it manifests, whether it's in entertainers and restaurants, in every sector and facet of Spanish life. And I frankly don't see how people go on vacation in Spain these days. I think it's for security reasons is one thing, but because we're aiding and abetting a state that has taken on this with such vengeance. So no, not at all. I think that that these ideas that permeate society to allow this kind of a cancerous development and you don't treat it, you just allow it day after day, then when 50,000 people, I mean, it's a city, have entered across the borders, and you can't just round them up. People always ask me, well, why don't they just go around? First of all, they permeate throughout the society, they go right away as fast as they can to get into other countries in Europe. And because you have the Schengen Agreement, there are no border checks by and large, and that's why East Europe does have still border checks and restricts immigration into their countries, Poland, others, which is why they have less of a problem.
Yeah, understood. And just curious, you said there was somewhat at one time a Jewish population in this Sweta. What about, you've been to Gibraltar, I assume, right?
Yes.
Is that a more significant Jewish population?
Well, it's thanks to one family largely, but they have, kosher restaurants. They have a kollel there. They have a very small Jewish population.
I mean, they're on the actual Spanish mainland, right?
They are, and this is disputed between Britain and Spain.
And the reason I ask is because what's their attitude now? If the Spanish government's got this attitude toward Israel, do you hear ever from the community in Gibraltar about that?
Oh, I hear there are remarkable people there, and as I said, it's really largely the doings of one family who underwrite this. When I was there, in fact, I went, and they invited me to speak to the government, which I did. And they were extremely friendly, open, wanting to know. Asked me a lot of questions, but very hospitable to the Jews. It's less than an hour flight from Tangier. You just go across the water, and you land in Gibraltar. They stop the traffic, then the plane lands, and the traffic resumes across the runway.
Wow!
And it's very small. It's a mountain with some monkeys and a population there. But they have been very good, and there used to be the governor of Gibraltar was Jewish, and there were several very prominent Jewish families there.
When we were in the UAE, we met people from Gibraltar. I have a feeling that they were from the family you're describing. All right, Malcolm, everybody wants to hear. Tell us your impressions of the Trump-Bibi meeting, and maybe even more importantly, tell us your impressions of another meeting that took place this week between the Prime Minister and the Vice President of the United States.
Right. So the first meeting that you referenced, we don't have all the details. We have the impressions. It's surprising more than leaked, but both sides have had people in the entourages who have spoken and all, put a good face forward. To say that the Prime Minister said this is the best meeting he ever had with him, and it was all smiles at the end of the meeting. I hope that is all true and reflective of what was said. As you know, it was quickly followed up now because of the peace agreement, or not the agreement that is reached supposedly to disarm Hamas.
Right.
And the president saying that Israel will then leave. And the relationship of a president who says, they all know who's boss, and the prime minister who is facing a very tough election, for whom the very negative reports that have come out, they're very damaging, because his strength was always that he had this special relationship. And the fact that he was the only leader in the world to be there 8 times, and to sit with the president as he did for an hour and a quarter. The other meeting, and again, there wasn't a specific as much as I think it was to talk about the threat of Iran, what it means now in terms of what they're rebuilding. As the president said, he has his own intelligence, and he doesn't need to be told what problems there are. But he does need to get the information that Israeli intelligence has picked up, right, because I think it portrays what we've seen now in the last couple of days, again, with Iran continuing its aggressive actions. The second meeting was very important because, as you know, there have been contentious remarks by the vice president about Israel in several interviews that he did, reflecting anger and biases that I think took some people by surprise, and having a meeting where they could have an open discussion and clarify, where he made the accusation that Israel was responsible or had hired PR people who were attacking him and undermining his position, especially because, he was seen as less supportive of the war, that the vice president made comments on those in a 3-hour interview. You do a 3-hour interview, you're bound to get into trouble on some of the issues. But in this case, he did a lot about the Middle East, and there were disturbing things. And, he's been associated with Tucker Carlson. He's been associated with other things. And then the Israel did hire somebody who had worked for MAGA to work with social influencers and on the social media, because Israel's getting slammed there. Right. There's nothing nefarious about doing that. I actually warned that I thought it had the risk of a negative impact. And of course, some of the media picked it up that he was under contract and working on this issue. But it had nothing to do with the vice president. It had to do with trying to correct the distortions and misrepresentations that are so commonplace and dominate the social media realm. So I think if they were able to assure them and clarify that what Israel was doing, what they were not doing, talk about some of the issues, and you can have differences. There's nothing wrong with that. The question is, what public expression do you give to it? And certainly, I think no Israeli government is going to pay somebody to undermine and to attack the vice president or the president of the United States. Maybe they may hurt New York, but not those guys. And which is another mistake I think they make again, that we should not have the prime minister talking about a mayor. He's a prime minister. He's above all of this. There are plenty of venues and opportunities. He'll come to New York. He doesn't have to announce it or challenge him. It's his right, and he will come. And I think that we have to consider what the best is to the mayors calling for demonstrations, which is just beyond any belief that a mayor of New York calls, which is really an invitation to violence and incitement. And we'll deal with that separately. But right now, I think the prime minister had good meetings with some of the leading members of the Senate, including Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who's just remarkable. Every time he's confronted with it, he doubles down and is stronger. Tom Cotton and many others, several others who met with him, which is important because without now Lindsey Graham being there, they were missing. There's a real void.
Right. And you have any problem with the demonstrations that are being planned? And I mean demonstrations in this case in a positive sense. The demonstrations being planned to welcome the prime minister to New York when he gets here in September?
I just think that they have to be done smart. I wanted to do a thing where we should put ads and have sites where people can sign up to commit that when he comes. And it's not about him, because it's a month before an election, this thing, it's interference and it's this, it's that. It's not. It should be a demonstration of support of Israel. It doesn't even have to have speakers. You don't have to have, you want to have a public image of demonstration of support. And frankly, I would like to see non-Jews take the lead on it. And there are non-Jews who are ready to do so, and to be very visible in a manifestation of some kind. I don't think it should be Israel asking for it or promoting it, and certainly the mayor should not be organizing or urging people to come out into the streets. I think this is this might be the ground for another lawsuit, which I think is something that should be considered. We have wonderful lawsuits going on all the time at universities, mostly. That effort is expanding, and it is very effective. So I think there should be, I would love to see the streets lined with children from schools waving American and Israeli flags, Jewish and non-Jewish. In that case, I think it's harder to do that. You're certainly not going to get the teachers union and public schools to agree to come out for demonstrations. Although I will say, and we should acknowledge that at the recent conference of the teachers union, which is notoriously hostile to Israel and increasingly to Jews nationwide, that they defeated the anti-Israel resolutions, and that's a credit to the Jewish organizations, to the conference and others who really worked very hard on it. It was a remarkable result.
It must have been close. It must have been close, because I've sat through some of those union meetings, and generally the other side gets at least 60%. So it must have been close.
It is always close with them, and they propagandize in the schools. It's become very hostile for Jewish teachers across the country, including in New York, and certainly for Jewish students. And that's why the Zucker schools were created remarkably across the country. Many in our own community don't know it, but thanks to the work of one individual primarily and his generosity, they created schools to take Jewish children out of public schools. I think there are 10 that were created across the country to give them a safe place. And I hear from teachers all the time who are desperate to get out and to look for other income and to express their real fear of what's going on. So, I know this goes a little bit away, but all of this is interrelated. All of it. It's all one puzzle, and each of these pieces fits into that same puzzle, whether it's what's happening on the local level in communities, whether it's what's happening on the international level. They're all related, and it's where there's an absence of will, where they don't stand up for principle. Everybody will pay the price. This is not a Jewish issue, and we can't let it be painted as a threat to Jews. It may be the most visible part of it, and he thinks maybe we're the most vulnerable, so that when he left off those communities from his map, he now announces that he's putting back Italy. He didn't put back the Jewish communities because he targets them. And that's why I think the prime minister plays into his hands by responding and by elevating him, so that for 2 weeks he's got national press just using the prime minister as a foil for something that he knew he couldn't do. Yep. It's just he couldn't do it from day one.
Yep, can't agree with you more. What did you think of the 18-member judicial advisory panel? Did we make too big of a deal about that no Jews were included?
No, I think that again, it's not because they're just Jews. It's because it's the pattern that is created.
Right.
And when 40% of the lawyers in New York City are Jewish, and when and would have been eligible for this committee, and they don't find one in 18. It's it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And they do it blatantly, knowing that it's going to create a controversy.
The only one who couldn't find the competent Jewish lawyer in New York.
Exactly.
It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio. Round the world, the web at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, the beloved NSN app. Malcolm Hoenlein with us. We call it the Weekly Update. President Trump posted on Truth Social last night that the Board of Peace reached an agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas and all other armed groups in Gaza. Malcolm, your reaction to this news item?
Well, it is certainly significant news, but, I don't think anybody should pop the cork on the champagne yet. I think we should welcome it. Disarming Hamas has been one of the objectives of Israel's efforts.
Did Hamas agree to this, by the way? Did they accept it?
So Hamas, according to all the reports, has accepted, but their contention all along is that they wouldn't turn the arms over to Israel or to any international body. They want to turn it over to the Palestinians. But once you take that and you store them inside Gaza, that means that they're accessible to anyway. So that, I hope, will not be acceptable to the other side. I think the conditions within Gaza and the protests of the people who are sick and tired of what Hamas brought on them. I think also, if you notice very quietly, Israel has every day eliminated another one of the October 7th attackers.
Right.
And these are not just leaders of Hamas. These are people who carried out, who went in and with arms and did horrific things. Almost every day, they are getting more and more of them. And you remember there were thousands who participated, but it's the leadership primarily that Israel has very successfully now dealt with this, and I think so. For some of the leaders, know that the noose is always getting closer to them. Might be an incentive for them to try and reach a deal, but the economic conditions are also such, and the fact that Iran cannot supply them now is a new aspect of this, of the reality that they face now. But we know that we've had so many deals with them in the past; they don't honor any of it. Israel will have to impose conditions. That's why their response has been pretty muted to it, because especially before an election, and I'm sure it'll become a political issue, that they'll say, Israel, after all the sacrifices and the losses, what does this deal really do for Israel's security? The answer is that we have a different circumstance. Israel's built a berm, a protective barrier. Israel is still there in 70% of Gaza, cleaning out the infrastructure, blowing up these incredible tunnels there and in Lebanon, and people don't realize it. You can't imagine until you've been inside and until you see this one that goes for hundreds of meters and then branches off with infrastructure. You can't even take stuff out. You have to blow them up because you can't dismantle them. I hope that the border peace will not be naive about the meaning and significance of a signature from Hamas. Will they create a new infrastructure in Gaza of leadership? We still don't see anybody filling the void. People talk about Dahlan, they talk about others, but we don't see anybody yet emerging in that role. And remember that Qatar and Turkey are playing a critical role in the implementation. That's not something that makes Israelis feel comfortable or Israel feel comfortable, and it shouldn't make the West feel comfortable. And the praise that is heaped on them, these are the people responsible who helped fund Hamas all along and to make possible all of the terror and the implementation of the radical agenda, which they, as Muslim Brotherhood countries, largely support.
So just clarify for me, if Israel would if Hamas would in fact disarm, if they would go along with this agreement, so Israel would still hold the yellow line or not? I mean, is that the...
No, the commitment is that they would start to withdraw. I'm sure it'll be staged withdrawal. It's not going to be instantaneous, but they have committed to withdrawal. But it's only after the disarmament is completed. And I would tell you that there are certainly a lot of military and other experts who would say that they don't see it being completed because they don't believe that they will live up to it. And a lot of the weapons are hidden. But the people of Gaza, many of them, they do not want this to continue. They pay the price for it. They see that half or 60% has really been cleansed of all of the infrastructure, and rebuilding is not something that they can take on. The people of the Gaza can't afford to do it, and now Iran is not going to give them the billions to do it. These are all part of the realities that I think have set in. And if they see Hezbollah weakened and they feel them become more isolated, it maybe even it's just as a temporary measure that they're not looking longer term. So the border peace proposal is an off-ramp for them.
Netanyahu this week told Trump and Vance that he wants Israeli defense independence. He proposed a new memorandum with direct military aid, missile defense development, and joint weapons R&D that'll be phased out over a decade. And then he instructed Israel's defense industry to build a homegrown stealth fighter jet and autonomous combat aircraft within 10 years. And this, I assume, is because he's worried about the future of the United States and its relationship with Israel, and if the U.S. will still be giving Israel the support that it needs. I guess we could say years from now. I mean, in this world, maybe we could say months from now, but God forbid, I'll leave it to years. Is there any area that Israel is better than the United States when it comes to aircraft development, or I don't know, these fighter jets? Like, is the United States still the gold standard, and there's really no category that Israel's caught up to yet?
Well, first of all, they work cooperatively, and as you know, Israel has developed the electronics for airplanes that are superior to what's on a regular plane, and they share that information with the United States. And so America is a beneficiary of the arms sales to Israel, because also you have battle-tested weapons. It's the only, it was the only place for years where, until the Iran war, where you really tested the planes, saw them in operation, saw the superiority of American over Russian arms sales, which is why the American sales soared. It's also why Israel's defense exports have reached record highs, amazing amounts, and the countries that are often hostile towards Israel, but they want to buy their brains and the equipment that they've developed. You remember the Lavi, when Moshe Ahrens was defense minister, Israel developed a fighter jet because they didn't want to be dependent, and because they wanted to include all the avionics and stuff that they developed. He invited me to come, and we went to the Negev, and we saw the actual demonstration of Lavi, and it crushed me when they canceled it under American pressure. The argument was that it was too expensive for Israel to do, and they were much better off applying the money to buying American weapons and upgrading them. Wow. But Israel's, and it's not just Israel, it's every country that is looking to become more independent, because when there's a shortage of weapons, as there is now, that is a real issue. The interceptors and other things, that when you have, two factories in the United States making bullets and ammunition, so Israel is moving to create their own ammunition factories. So will the Europeans and others, to make sure that they have ample supply when needed. And America has to ramp up production, because, after facing what we're doing in Iran, thank God we don't have another front right now that's active. But should another front, let's say China, become active, it would be difficult. It would put a strain on the supplies of weapons they could have. So Israel's avionics and defense things that they have developed for on the ground, for tanks, for everything, are the highest standard. They're the apex for countries, and that's why all these countries are lining up. And if you look at Israel's exports, they're record highs. A lot of that has to do with the defense sector. And I still think it was a mistake to give up the Lavi then. Right. And for Israel, the money that Israel gets from the United States, all but a small percentage is spent in the United States. It creates 40,000 jobs in the United States at least, and probably. You know
how many people need to hear the last 3 minutes of what you just said, because the impression out there is that Nebuch Israel is in such a terrible position and is a real weakling compared to the U.S., especially when it comes to negotiations over these defense weapons, because look at the direction of this country. We all wonder whether there'll be great, U.S. support for Israel down the road, even the short road. And if they heard you over the last 3 minutes, it's a completely wrong impression. Israel is at a tremendous position of strength. Yeah, there's this one issue of, USA that's got to be worked out, so to speak. But it doesn't sound like a Nebuch story to me.
Well, first of all, the interdependence is going to continue, and we want it to be. And what the new plan would essentially do is build on U.S.-Israel cooperation, but it's a 10-year phase out of the military aid of $3.3 billion. Right. But it would institute funds of $5 to $10 billion for missile research, and there are three parts of it, which would involve big money, which both sides will put in, but it's a mutual commitment. It's not, Israel phased out economic aid. Most people don't know. When I tell them, that Israel was given the opportunity, because I carried the message to Israel to get debt forgiveness of $7 billion, which is what the foreign aid that they were receiving, the non-military, was just to pay the debt service, the interest on the $7 billion. And Shamir refused to take it. Right. Egypt took it. Many other countries took it during the Gulf War with Iraq. And Israel didn't, because he said he doesn't want the impression to be created that we don't pay our bills, even though that was not the impression and it was a mistake. But now they did. They paid it down, all of that aid, and they cut off. Israel gets no aid anymore, economic aid for domestic use. It's only military. And the return on that military aid, both in terms of development of the America's industry, the secrets that they get from Israel, the testing ground, the the joint development of weapons like Iron Dome, which is a joint Israeli-American thing that would not have been possible without the relationship with America. So I think those things will continue. But the interdependence is something that we should want to see and want to go into the future. The military CENTCOM has been great to Israel and for Israel, and Israel great for them. The pilots come back raving about the cooperation with Israeli pilots. Look at the fact that they want to put their planes in Israel. They don't want to go to Arab countries and some of the other bases which are in striking distance of Iran and by Iran. Those are all indications. The press, won't tell you that and won't play up the fact that you have in so many planes there that it was starting to bottleneck Ben Gurion Airport, that they had to move a lot of the refuelers and things to Ramon Air Force Base in the south. So it decreases the leverage, but it highlights the cooperative relationship that exists in the military realm. And I think Secretary Hegseth has been very supportive, and I think his comments this week reflect that as well.
Yeah, I was surprised. Well, I shouldn't say surprised. That was heartwarming, the way the Prime Minister praised him and the way that he received, the comments about security and defense for Israel. I was happy to see that, frankly, because I don't know, with Hegseth, it always seems like there's always mixed reviews. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they like to knock him, but he has been consistent. Rubio as well, and others within the administration are outspokenly, supportive of the U.S.-Israel special relationship. There are others who are more skeptical, and we mentioned some of them. But the key, of course, is the president, who sets the tone and who makes the decisions, and in this case, most of the important decisions. And so, Hegseth's role has been distorted. I think they're going after him. I think if he was a bigger critic of Israel, some of the media would like him a lot better. But he has been supportive, was known before, in fact, to be supportive. And I think that we should acknowledge it and note it. And the U.S.-Israel military cooperation is, really amazing today.
Do you think the U.S. will honor the request of Israel to tie Saudi normalization to the nuclear deal?
That was the president's initiative. I think everybody was taken aback first by the deal itself. The idea that giving Saudi Arabia nuclear capacity, they have not come into the Abraham Accords, and I don't think we should be pressing them, because the more we press them publicly, the less likelihood. The more there are other ways to deal with Saudi Arabia. Saudis face challenges from the Houthis. They are attacking in the last 48 hours. They have been attacking the Houthis in Yemen, which is next door to them, and the Houthis have fired on the Saudi facilities as well as on others. Egypt yesterday came under attack for the first time. And two ships were in the Damanshi air base, naval base, were hit. So Saudi Arabia is always a very complex story. MBS has said positive things, wants to bring the country out of its dependence on fossil fuels, wanted to build the big city in Nome. I don't think that's quite going to happen. But I think that there are ways to get them. And the fact that all of these countries came under attack, when you mentioned before, and I wanted to remind people, Israel is fighting on all of these fronts. Now all of a sudden, they are having to defend themselves. And I mean, from Bahrain to UAE to Qatar to Kuwait to Saudi Arabia, all of them now, Egypt, Jordan. But remember, Israel's been having to face these challenges all along. We had a 7-front war. People have already forgotten it. And that this little country that, the hardly fits on a map took them on. They broke down the Iranian threat. So when it comes to nuclear, it raised the level, because once you have the capacity, you can always turn it to use it for enrichment and greater levels, which is what the Iranians did. I hope that we will do something about Pickaxe Mountain. But remember, the stuff is under 150 meters down in the ground, under a mountain of granite. a granite mountain, which is very hard to penetrate. Even the bunker buster bombs can't do a job on it. I think the fact that the recommendation of the White House to the Congress regarding the sale of the F-35s to Turkey was a recommendation that they're not eligible to get it right now, and as they still have the Russian anti-aircraft systems and stuff, and which is a contradiction to getting, because they could compromise security, etc. But I think that was important. It's something that Israel is very concerned about. They even came to the point of saying we could give them downgraded F-35s. It's a very special plane, and we still have hopeful signs on the Lebanese front. And Shara said that he's under pressure to go much tougher against Israel, not because I think he's a good guy. I still think he's got ties into a lot of elements that are not savory. But Israel is still protecting the Druze and the Kurds. And if there's any stability in Syria, it's largely because of their presence. I know the Turkey and others are angry that he hasn't done more to rout Israel out of Syria. And, the suggestions that they go to Lebanon were ridiculous. That was really to open the door to Hezbollah coming in and being on the border, because they think they will be tougher against Israel on the buffer zone and on the corridor to the Druze. We have so many complex issues and so much stuff. Lebanon is a hopeful sign, but, we have to remember the infrastructure within the Shiite community, which is pro-Iranian. Much of it is. But I think people are sick and tired of the dying and the fighting, even in some of the Shiite communities. But half the army of the Lebanese army are Shiite. So, just saying that we're going to bring them in and that the LAF will come in, Lebanese armed forces, it isn't a panacea to the problems that exist there.
Yeah, you're asking a significant part of the military to take on a group that they essentially support, or at least they have a kinship with.
Exactly. And we could take each of these things that we just talked about in for a minute. You have the Palestinian elections coming up in addition to the Israeli elections. You have Karim Khan from the internet getting thrown out of the International Criminal Court, and he led the assault against Israel. We have so many fronts, so many things that are going on at one time that it makes it hard. And I know why people can't assimilate it all. Even the experts don't assimilate it all into, understanding. And every aspect with Iran has to be examined, because everything will matter. When America cuts off Bandar Abbas, people don't realize how critical that is to the economy of Iran, that so much flows from them. And now they literally isolated them. And people saying, well, what is American bombing doing? Right. It is doing. You don't see it. It's not, it's not Disneyland where you have exhibitions of the results, but they are successful. Whether they, and people talking about bombing, the sites, they don't realize how complicated that would be because of, as I told you, just the topography.
Yeah, it's miraculous. What they've done already is miraculous.
And that that the Iranians couldn't hold back and launch the attacks, right, which forced the president's hand. I think the president would want to see, really wants to give them a chance to come to the table, or is really just giving him enough rope. But one of the signs to me is the increased executions again in the streets. In the streets, they set up a scaffolding in streets and hung people who were involved in the demonstrations. Then there weren't sabotage, there wasn't espionage, and they hung young people who were part of demonstrations in addition to the 50,000 that were killed, or 52,000. Where's the outcry?
Was there an arraignment in the ICC for that?
Yeah, right. They sent a group of observers to make sure that they were dead.
Yeah, the observers would fear they'd never get out of the country, frankly. That's how brave and courageous they are. Thank you so much, Mr. Hoenlein. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll speak, please God, next week.
God willing, be well.
Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations, weekly update here at JM in the AM, Fridays, 7:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to always tune in. or head to the archive section, or head to our YouTube page at Nachum Segal Net. It's also a chance to catch the interview on our YouTube page.